Barrington's newly established W.E.B. Du Bois Legacy Committee. Today is another first in Great Barrington history, and we're honored to be a part of it. For the first time, the Legacy Committee has planned and organized our town's Martin Luther King Day celebration, a responsibility we take to heart. Thankfully, our committee's roots are deep and steeped in tradition. For the past 20 years, the Southern Berkshire Interfaith Clergy Association had led this august celebration of human dignity and freedom. Their lasting gift, today's 20th anniversary interfaith celebration, is our town's benchmark moving forward. The town of Great Barrington acknowledges its many community organizers and sponsors of today's events, including Interfaith Clergy Association, represented by Legacy Committee member Ray Gunn, the First Congregational Church, the Du Bois Center, Multi-Central Cultural Bridge, represented by Committee Vice Chair Gwendolyn Van Sant, and Bridges Legion of Volunteers, who made our day of service possible. "71 years ago this month, Gandhi was assassinated. King would proclaim his philosophy of nonviolent resistance the only morally and practically sound method open to oppressed people in their struggle for freedom. Another admirer of Gandhi, W.E.B. Du Bois, also mourned the loss. His manuscript essay eulogizing the Indian leader, called the greatest man in the world, and other remarkable Du Boisian treasures are on display at the Mason Library. Like King, and I suspect like many of us, Du Bois believed the Gandhi doctrine must triumph or modern civilization falls, as the cultures of Greece and Rome fell 2,000 years ago. I'd like to introduce the moderator of today's distinguished panel. Dr. Justin Jackson is a powerhouse inside and outside the classroom. An associate professor of history at Simon's Rock, Justin's book, The Work of Empire, the U.S. Military and the Making of American Colonialisms in Cuba and the Philippines, is in the capable hands of his publisher. We're fortunate to have Justin on the Legacy Committee, where he constantly ceases to amaze, whether facilitating world-class lectures with the likes of Eric Foner, his advisor at Columbia University, or dashing off essays in the Berkshire Edge, exploring Dr. Du Bois's politics and passion for social justice. Justin, thank you.
Thank you, Randy, for that introduction. And I'm new to Great Barrington and the Berkshires, but I know that joining the Du Bois Legacy Committee is an honor, and resting on the shoulders of yourself, Gwendolyn, and Barbara Dean and Ray Gunn, and many others who've been working on commemorating King and Du Bois here long before I got here. So thank you. I'd like to welcome our panelists up to our table here, and we can have a panel discussion. This is a scholarly panel in some ways to start to think about Martin Luther King Day and Martin Luther King and his legacy and his meaning. But hopefully it won't be too scholarly. It'll be kind of conversational and an opportunity for things. So I'd like to introduce our distinguished panelists. Frances Jones Seed is Professor Emerita of History at the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts in Williamstown here in the Berkshires, and I know she's been very active in preserving African American history here in the Berkshires for a long time, and has done incredible work, which I think we may hear about. And Professor Wesley Brown is a professor at Bard College at Simon's Rock. He's published 4 works of fiction and produced 4 plays. He's taught literature and creative writing at Rutgers University for 26 years before coming to Simon's Rock to teach literature and modern American drama and creative writing. So I don't know if we have a microphone here, but if I could just hand that so everyone can hear the conversation. I'll try to raise my voice here and project. So one question I had for you, Francis and Wesley, has to do with how we remember Martin Luther King on this holiday. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Ray. So one question I had for our panelists today was the meaning and significance of this holiday, how we remember Martin Luther King and his legacy. Here in Great Barrington, many of you know, and I think Randy referred to this, we have started to try to remember W.B. Du Bois' legacy here in the Berkshires, and marking the anniversary of his birth. This has been a difficult year, I think, thinking in terms of anniversaries in African American history. Last year was of course, the 50th anniversary of the year that Martin Luther King was taken from us in Memphis, where we were supporting, as some of you may know, a strike by sanitation workers. In the news recently, we've heard about 2019 being the 400th anniversary of a rather tragic moment in American world history, right? The arrival of the first ship transporting Africans who had been enslaved, right? So this is an opportunity, in my opinion, to think about America's original sin in some ways. And yet we also have some powerful movements in America to remember Martin Luther King and African American history. There's a new monument in Washington, D.C. to Martin Luther King, which is exceptional. There's a new Smithsonian museum to African American history and culture in Washington, D.C., which I wish as historians we could force people to go to museums. I'd love to force everyone in America to go to that museum. There are now museums in Montgomery, Alabama that the Equal Justice Initiative has organized, which are really exceptional. So my question is, what's the meaning for you of Martin Luther King Day? How should we remember Martin Luther King and his legacy? How should we remember the contributions and struggles of people of color and African Americans in the United States? Is Martin Luther King Day enough? Are we doing enough? And how should we remember these anniversaries?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming today. I guess in responding to your question, Justin, I found a quote from I think one of the ethical and moral figures of our time, Reverend William Barber, who said last year at this same time, we don't need a commemoration, we need a reconsecration. The Bible says, woe unto those who love the tombs of the prophets. The duty of the living is not simply to recall the martyrs of the movement, but to continue their work. And Reverend Barber has been one of those persons who has been doing that, I think, to sustain the work that Martin Luther King Jr. and others began during the mid-1950s, of course, beginning with the Montgomery bus boycott. I think it was in 2013, Reverend Barber began what was called Moral Mondays, protests at North Carolina State Capitol, bringing to light the Republican Governor Pat McCrory's support for restrictions on abortion, loosening of environmental regulations, and denial of Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Care Act. And these protests began with about 75 people, and then over the next 4 years, the numbers were well over 1,000. And as a result of those protests at the state capitol, in 2016, Governor McCrory was defeated in the gubernatorial race against Roy Cooper, a Democrat. So I think that is one of the things that I speak very directly to the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. and what we citizens should be engaged in. Reverend Barber has also been working with Presbyterian Minister Liz Theo-Harris, and they've embarked upon an extension of the 1968 Poor People's Campaign in what they call a national call for moral revival, which involves traveling to various states and helping to foster a network of communities among local people who identify issues and concerns of importance to them. This is very similar to what SNCC, also the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, did in the early 1960s through the 1960s when young people went into rural black communities in the Deep South and began organizing efforts among local blacks to identify what people in those communities saw as their needs and the things that they felt needed to be addressed. This, I believe, was very instrumental in King's evolution from someone who moved away from the belief that leadership descends from the pulpit to the pew, but then embraced the view that leadership should ascend from the pew to the pulpit. And this had been the approach of a very unheralded figure in the civil rights movement, Ella Baker, who was instrumental in forming both the Southern Christian Leadership Conference and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And it was her work that I think was instrumental as well in sort of beginning to move ministers such as King away from a sort of pretty much male hierarchical system where women were not seen as capable of being involved in leadership positions within the movement. And she called on people to be more people-oriented in terms of leadership rather than what she called leader-oriented people. And this is someone who I think should be studied a great deal. There's a documentary on Ella Baker as well as biographical works that have been written on her. And I think she is one of those undersung individuals who I think we can gain a lot from in terms of whatever activities that we engage in as citizens to not only keep the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. alive, but also to, as Reverend Barber has said, to continue the work that was begun during that period of the 1960s.
I agree with Wesley. Indeed, Ella Baker, as I call her mother, Ella, was really instrumental in my coming to call myself an activist in the Black Power movement with SNCC. As far as the celebration of King's birthday, I agree that we come together each year to celebrate this legacy, to talk about King, and it's usually a very feel-good kind of situation. We talk about the beloved community, we sing, we shall overcome, and we feel good, and then we go home. And one of my favorite poets, Mary Oliver, just passed, and her calling to me is, what are you doing with your wild and life in this way? And she really saw through her poetry and looking at the world of something. And I think that would be King's call to all of us. Not just a day of celebration, not just a monument that we go to look at in Washington, but what are we doing for ourselves and others doing this whole kind of thing? I was just reading something in the Chronicle of Higher Education by the president of Dillard University, who is, Dillard University is a historically Black institution in Louisiana. And he was talking about reading King's last great work, Where Do We Go From Here? And sometimes I think that we go back and we look at King's 1963 speech. We even look at his Vietnam speech at the Riverside Baptist Church. But we don't go back and look at exactly what drove King to go to Memphis to support those sanitation workers. We talk about politics, but we don't talk about economics. And King was very interested in the economic benefits of what's happening. We had legislative things going on in 1965, Voting Rights Act, the Housing Acts. We had all of these federal acts, which have now, kind of come to fruition, and it's been kind of overturned one way or the other, because we are more segregated here in the United States today in the 21st century than we were back in King's time. Segregated not only in the church, but segregation in education. We look at our Black communities in urban areas and even in rural areas, and we see this same kind of segregation going on. We see the white violence continuing to be, and King said, don't fool ourselves to think that we think about white violence as the Ku Klux Klan, those unlettered and those ignorant kind of people, but it goes to the very highest level, and especially in levels of economic power. And so it was really the economic power that King came to see that was at issue here. And his Poor People's March, the essence of the Poor People's March was to get at that economic, to have some economic standards where we all would be part of that kind of beloved community. And that beloved community, we can say we love our neighbor, we love each other no matter race, creed, color. But what does love mean if we don't have any justice, King said. Love comes with justice as well. And so I think we need to think about that, and not just one day. This is a 365, days of really kind of activism that we must have, and we must commit as individuals to ourselves. I think that's what we need to do if we really want to honor King's legacy.
Thank you very much. And both of your comments about the Poor People's Campaign are really interesting. If I'm not mistaken, William Barber is trying to revive that and speak about a kind of a new stage in that struggle around economic segregation, you could say. So you talked about some of the legacies of Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement being achieved at the national level, right? When we think, you mentioned, Francis, the Housing Act. Of course, we think about Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We think about the Voting Rights Act. And there have been recently some progress at the national level in terms of federal legislation, even under the current regime, if you will. There was a kind of slight move in the last couple of weeks, I think, towards criminal justice reform. But I would say, on the whole, we've seen a retreat recently at the federal level, right? The Obama administration put in agreements with police departments around the country to try to address police brutality in the wake of events in Ferguson and other places. We see the Voting Rights Act chipped away with Shelby County versus Holder in 2013. And so it seems like in some ways we're regressing at the national level in terms of legislation. Where do people put activism around civil rights and racial equality today, in the future, moving forward, when it seems like the federal government is not a receptive venue for this? Where should people put their activism? At the local level, the state level, here in New England and Western New England? I wonder what your thoughts are about where people should direct their political and civic energies at this moment.
Well, I think in keeping with what the work of people such as Reverend Barber and Reverend Theo Harris, that we are the people that we should be waiting for. That efforts, we have 3 branches of government, and they're supposed to be co-equal: legislative, executive, and judicial. But it seems to me that any fundamental change that has ever occurred in this country has been the result of the efforts of people, ordinary people, who begin to agitate, make noise, begin to challenge those policies, those laws that have not addressed, or in many instances have regressed in terms of how they apply to the lives and the concerns of people such as those of us who are here and others. So historically, that seems to be borne out. Any embattled group of people in this country has been forced to not to wait for the branches of government to address their needs. They've had to make noise, get in the streets, whether it was people like Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez in forming the Farm Workers Union in California. Dolores Huerta is someone who is also one of the women who was quite unheralded in the movement for human, economic, political rights. Women's suffrage in this country would not have occurred. We're in, I guess, the 100th anniversary of women gaining the right to vote, but the efforts to extend that to actual opportunities and the fulfillment of that right in all other areas of life has come as a result of women getting in the streets and actively making demands heard and forcing change. Laws that usually have been to the benefit of embattled people in this country have only been passed as a result of those efforts of ordinary people who have forced those changes. So I guess, to your question, Justin, is that all of us are charged with becoming involved in whatever way we can in activities, involving ourselves in struggles that we feel we can make a difference in. And so I guess there's that quote from the Jewish philosopher Hillel, which, if I'm not for myself, who will be for me? If I'm for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when? It seems that, as I said, that paraphrase from the poet June Jordan, we are the people we have been waiting for.
I agree, Wesley. I always believe that, and I think historically we can look at, it's from the local, it is from the grassroots, that we have found that nothing has come from the top down. It has always been the grassroots up. And the grassroots have formed organizations and pushed for national action. And it's through the local that we have had these national kinds of things coming about. Were it not for King and SCLC and SNCC and others, we would not have the Voting Rights Act or the Housing Act or any of those kind of acts, because of the pressure that the locals have kind of put on the national kind of thing. And just look at Black Lives Matters. This is a kind of a non-organization. I know the millennials don't like to call it an organization. But it was from the grassroots. A few, 3 women coming up, and then this idea kind of spreading on social media, and people saying, hey, that's a great idea, I want to be a part of that. And so really kind of doing something as a result of that. I know you have a question about Black Lives Matter a little bit later, so I won't go too far on that. But I do believe that the local is the most important. If we're doing what we need to do in our community, if we're doing what we need to do here in Berkshire County in order to change the curriculum in our public schools, where our public school children understand the contemporary politics, where they understand who W.E.B. Du Bois was and what he stood for, who Martin Luther King is. You know, a lot of school children said they're tired of MLK Day because that's the only thing they get. Like every year is the same thing over and over again. And so expanding some of those kinds of things, making sure that we have the right people on our school boards, that making sure that we have the right people as mayors, as governors, as city councilors. And I think that we're coming to that. But, you know, we had a very lively campaign here in the Berkshires. And I won't mention that because I know you all know what that's all about. But we had a very lively campaign where I think people stepped up, and some people who had never been part of politics before really stepped up to kind of support, to go door to door, to kind of ask them to do some of those kinds of things. And so I know that from that, then we could go to our state level to see one of our state representatives at the federal level now, and you know, the picture of all of the people of color and women who are in the new Congress, and we have to say yay for that. And that all started on a local level. It did not come from our present congressmen and senators to say, you know, we need these people. Because those guys want to hold their seats until they are carried out on a stretcher. But,
Thank you very much, and that reminds me, I mean, if people don't know about Ayanna Pressley, you should be paying attention to what's going on in Massachusetts. So there's some incredible leaders that we can look to for inspiration today. Randy earlier mentioned Gandhi and Gandhi and nonviolence, and I don't think anyone would argue with the fact that Martin Luther King introduced that philosophy along with a Christian commitment to peace as well, to the country. Yet there is extraordinary violence in the United States, particularly against people of color, and not just African Americans, right? But especially African Americans. There's the spectacular violence we hear about, the police shootings, police murders, and then there's the everyday violence, you could say, of mass incarceration, right? Of our criminal justice system, of unemployment, and being underpaid and overworked. How do we relate to Martin Luther King's message of nonviolence? How do we relate to that kind of way of thinking about being engaged politically and civically with each other in the country when people are facing such extraordinary conditions? Maybe not all of us every day, but people that we care about, people in the country. How do we appreciate nonviolence as a method, but maybe even a way of thinking, a way of being? Is that important? I wonder what your thoughts are about that. Maybe Francis.
oh, well, I have to admit, a kind of confession that I came up kind of on kind of the cusp of what you call the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, and was a part of a campus chapter of SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and we really didn't go along with Martin and his nonviolence methods. Because when you're young, you want things to happen now. you don't want to have to wait for so long. You don't want to have to sit at the lunch counter and have somebody throwing things in your face and that kind of stuff. And so it's only in my old age that I have come to appreciate Martin more. Because young people can be kind of anxious about the future and stuff like that. And I think when you get older, you're much more conservative about, and you really, savor life a little bit more than and that whole kind of thing. But I think that Martin was a sensible man, and he knew that nonviolence was a methodology. But he knew that violence was a methodology, nonviolence was a methodology to present to whites, to talk about that. We would like to be a part of this beloved community. We would like to be nonviolent, but we knew that that's not what was going to be the response from the community, right? And so I think Malcolm once said, you should love me because you know that if Martin's methods doesn't work, then you have to go to my methods by any means necessary, right? And so it took a Malcolm, it took a SNCC, it took the kind of left-wingers for Martin's kind of program to really kind of be appreciated because of the lesser of kind of two evils, I believe. And so I think that you need both. You need those kind of very aggressive and agitated kind of people who are on the line, who's going to be doing these kinds of things, as well as people like Martin who said, let's talk about it, let's moderate this thing, let's sit down and come up with some ideas about it. And that's when people kind of listen to these kinds of things. So I think he understood that. I think he was a bright man as far as that was concerned.
I would agree with Francis on that score. I was also involved with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Mississippi in the mid-'60s, and also with the Black Panther Party. So, and many of you know anything about the Black Panther Party, particularly its founding in 1966 as the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense in Oakland, started by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale. And even within SNCC during those earlier years, there was a debate between nonviolence as a tactic and nonviolence as a way of life. And there's been, a continuing debate about that. Now, I guess if we look at the example of the Black Panther Party and its various chapters and what took place with many people within the Black Panther Party, whether in Oakland, Los Angeles, Connecticut, Chicago, New York, is that even just the appearance of aggressiveness, whether it was the black leather jackets, the berets, when Huey Newton went to he didn't go, but they were there was a statute in the state law in California where there was open carry. You could carry shotguns as long as they were not loaded. And so they began to carry shotguns openly in the streets as a way to demonstrate to police that they were being observed as they were ostensibly carrying out their duties. And immediately the state legislature in Sacramento decided to pass a law against open carry when it was viewed that the Panthers were doing it. So members of the Black Panther Party went to Sacramento to protest this new legislation, and they were arrested. And if you are aware of the kind of reign of terror that took place against the Black Panther Party during the mid to 1960s with the execution of people such as Fred Hampton, the murders that were taking place all over this country in various chapters of the Black Panther Party, it became apparent that even the appearance of resistance in terms of bravado or just presenting oneself as being willing to push back well as the federal government, has had no reluctance, hasn't had any reluctance in returning the response with the full force of arsenal and military force. So I think Martin Luther King was right about his caution in terms of presenting people presenting themselves in a way that would be perceived as the willingness to take up weapons against state authority. And I think that's something that he counseled those of my generation who were very young and, as Francis pointed out, impatient to see that that response is something that should be thought about and very carefully before you find yourself in situations where you can bring the wrath down not only on yourself, but an entire community who will suffer the impact of that police response. And I guess as I've gotten older as well, I guess, Mark Twain said it was quite amazing that as his father got older, he found that his father got a lot smarter. He said it was a miracle how this evolution in his behavior occurred. He could not believe it. So I think that's something that happens to all of us who are not young forever.
Thank you. And just one last question. Maybe if we have a moment or two, just a moment. One last question. Martin Luther King is so well known today, but we forget that actually when he started his activism in Georgia and Alabama, very few people knew about him. He was an unknown entity, an unknown person in a lot of ways. You mentioned William Barber, who's now inspiring a lot of people, not just in North Carolina, but around the country. Are there organizations, are there movements, are there things going on which are unexpected and unknown, but becoming known that are exciting to you now in 2019? Someone wanted me to ask about, for example, Colin Kaepernick and the position that athletes have taken to stand up against things going on in this country, right? Which I'm not sure anyone expected, and has been really exciting and inspiring in some ways. I wonder if you could tell us, are there individuals out there or things that you're aware of that we should be thinking about to kind of draw inspiration in 2019?
Yes, I think that I have a lot of respect for the millennials and their Black Lives Matters movement. Young people who take the bull by the horn and kind of say to us oldsters, respectability, politics, be gone. We need to do what we need to do in order to change, because this is our future. And I really kind of respect that and kind of bow to that. I really love Brian Stevenson and the work that he's doing in Alabama. And I haven't seen that, but I'm going to go there this summer to see. But I've heard Brian speak a number of times. He's a very brilliant man, and the way that he's taking on, he and Angela Davis and others are taking on prison reform and kind of looking at that. I think that that's wonderful. And to see that, I think that the vestiges of that, look at Florida, who did away with, now that prisoners can actually vote, and Florida of all places, and I said, if Florida can do it, we should be trying to do that in Massachusetts and in Vermont. We should be trying to follow those kinds of leads. So I think that there's some really kind of exciting things that are going on and happening. The Organization of Black Women and what they are kind of pointing out and what they are kind of doing today. I think that there are, and just the birth of social media and what social media has done with our lives, and just not when we're talking about our grandbabies and things like that, but I'm talking about the kind of political kinds of ways that Twitter, and to a lesser extent Facebook, has done for kind of movements in this country. And I think we all owe this all to our millennial generation. And I'm so glad about that. I mean, you remind me so much of a younger me. And so glad to be alive to see all of the action during this apart period of time. So I always try to dive in where I can. So, what is it? Agitate, that Frederick Douglass said. Agitate, agitate, agitate.
Well, in addition to the emergence of this very loose sort of aggregation of Black Lives Matter, of course, there's the Me Too movement, the just wonderful results of the recent 2018 election, with I think over 100 women were elected to Congress. And I guess what's heartening to me is that what many of these women ran on had to do with what was happening in specific communities, that issues that were not being addressed by the incumbents. And we have the first two Native American women. I mean, it sounds that seems mind-boggling that in the history of this country, that this recent election was the first time two Native American women have been elected to Congress, Muslim as well. And there was this wonderful fold-out section of the New York Times, I think a few days ago, that had all the women who are serving both in the Congress and the House of Representatives and the Senate, and reading the blurbs of what many of these women ran on, and the things that they want to be, to articulate and want to become active in pushing for, is quite heartening. There was a quote from Kamala Harris, Senator from California, where she said that her mother always has told her that there are many things that you will probably be the first to do. The important thing is to make sure that you won't be the last.
Thank you. I know originally we had planned for questions, but I know maybe we're running out of time. Maybe afterwards, I would invite all of you please to stay for the reception, which we'll hear more about, and have a chance to talk to Francis and Wesley there. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists for your